Chapter 106, The Body Knows More. Why what I didn't believe in worked. I'm writing this chapter for skeptics, for those who hear body work and think quackery, for those who believe in evidence, in repeatable experiments, in peer-reviewed journals. I'm one of them, product manager, engineer by training, a person who spent 20 years living inside her head and thought the body was just transport for the brain. Everything I'll describe here I first discovered on myself, then I checked, and found that science had already described it. I just didn't know. There's nothing here about energy channels or the cosmos, only about how the brain, the nervous system, and the muscles work, and why it matters for a person who grew up in hell. 1. The body remembers what the head forgot. I was a few months old when my mother was stabbed and she dropped me. I don't remember this. Before 2 or 3 years old, conscious memories don't form. The hippocampus hasn't matured yet. I wasn't afraid of knives. Didn't think about it. But when our team was born, something changed. He was an infant, small, defenseless. And for the first time, I developed an irrational panic around knives. Not the thought knives are dangerous, or a panic, bodily, disproportionate, as if the body remembered what the head never knew. Humans have 2 types of memory. Conscious, explicit. I remember getting a C in 5th grade. Activates at 2 or 3 years old. And unconscious, implicit, bodily, emotional, works from birth. Recorded without conscious awareness, including through the amygdala, a brain structure involved in processing fear. Implicit memory doesn't store memories. It stores reactions. Scream equals freeze. Hit equals clench. My panic that appeared next to my own infant, probably not a coincidence. The situation small child plus knife plus danger could have activated a reaction recorded in the first months of life, when I myself was that infant. Squire and Condell, 1999. Ledoux, 1996. The landmark ACE study, Felitti, Anda et al., 1998, on more than 17,000 patients established. The more categories of adverse childhood experience, the higher the probability of chronic illness in adulthood. The body keeps score, even when the head doesn't know. What this means for you. If you have reactions that seem disproportionate to the situation, panic without cause, rage over nothing, freezing when someone raises their voice, that's not weak character. It may be implicit memory, the body reacting to something that happened long ago, before words, before consciousness. The first step, don't fight the reaction. Notice, this isn't about now. This is about then. That single observation already creates distance. 2. Why just relax doesn't work. My whole life, people told me, relax. I couldn't. Not because I didn't want to. The autonomic nervous system has 2 main modes: sympathetic, mobilization, fight or flight, and parasympathetic, recovery, rest. In a child growing up under constant threat, the sympathetic system is chronically activated. That's not personality. It's the nervous system's adaptation to an environment where relaxation was dangerous. In PTSD, there's heightened amygdala activity and reduced prefrontal cortex activity. Shin, Rauch, and Pittman, 2006. The part of the brain that screams danger is too loud. The part that should answer, it's safe now, too quiet. Stephen Porges proposed the polyvagal theory, 2011, describing 3 levels of regulation: safety, mobilization, and freeze. This model is widely used in clinical practice, though some of its claims are debated. For me, it provided a framework. Freeze isn't laziness. Mobilization isn't being energetic. These are nervous system modes, not character traits. What this means for you. Relax is a meaningless instruction for someone whose nervous system is set to survival. A different path is needed, not a command, but a repeating experience of safety. Relax for a second, and nothing terrible happened. Again, not through understanding, through repetition, not in a day, over months. 3. Chronic stress physically changes the body. My whole life, I walked with a clenched stomach, clenched jaw, tense neck. I thought on posture. Under chronic stress, muscles remain in elevated tension for years. The connection between stress, muscle tension, and pain is well documented. Lundberg et al., 1999. Connective tissue, fascia, also reacts. Loses elasticity, thickens. Schleip et al., 2012. The link between fascia and trauma storage remains a hypothesis, but that chronic stress physically changes tissue. That's a confirmed fact. The first time I relaxed my abs was when I got pregnant. 30 years of continuous tension. A reason appeared to unclench. A baby inside who needed room. What this means for you. If your neck constantly hurts, your jaw clenches, your back aches, and doctors find nothing, it could be chronic muscle tension from stress. Massage, stretching, osteopathy, yoga can help not because spiritual practice, but because it physically relaxes what's physically locked. Start small. Notice where you're tense right now. 4. Breathing switches the nervous system. For a year, I couldn't learn diaphragmatic breathing. 10 therapists explained the diaphragm barely engaged, that chronic spasm, I couldn't feel it. The vagus nerve, the longest cranial nerve connecting the brain to internal organs. It plays a key role in parasympathetic regulation. Slow, deep breathing, especially with extended exhale, is associated with increased parasympathetic activity, lower pulse, reduced anxiety. Gerritsen and Band, 2018, a theoretical model consistent with clinical data. What this means for you. Specifically, extend your exhale. Inhale for 4 counts, exhale for 6 to 8. No visualization needed, no belief needed, just a long exhale. The body responds reflexively, not after one time, after hundreds. It took me a year, but every exhale is a step. The specific practices I started with in the What to Listen to Next section. 5. Why yoga helps and what muscles have to do with it, not karma. Gym didn't help. In my case, gym loaded the surface muscles, biceps, quads, and nothing changed. Then I started doing Surya Namaskar, and the pain in my sacrum went away. No pills. The problem, it turned out, was related to deep stabilization, muscles that support the spine, stabilize the pelvis, control breathing. They engage through slow, controlled movement, exactly what yoga does. Cat-cow, I did it every day and listened. I changed the angle, the shoulder blade moves, press a little harder with the palm, the clamp above the shoulder blade starts to release. My body is a musical instrument requiring millimeter by millimeter tuning. No one can do this but me. Physiologically, cat-cow mobilizes each spinal segment individually, restoring mobility. It's proprioception training. The brain relearns to feel each vertebra. Cobra. As I learned to breathe with the diaphragm, my ribs started opening better. In Cobra, the chest opens, exactly the zone where I had a plate. This is stretching of the intercostal muscles and opening the thoracic section, which under chronic stress compresses into a protective posture. Child's pose? I couldn't do it. Suffocated, panic. A pose where you need to relax and surrender. Impossible for a person for whom relaxation equals danger. This isn't a physical limitation. It's a nervous system that won't allow you to lie down and give in. A randomized controlled trial by Van der Kolk et al. 2014, published in the Journal of Clinical Psychiatry, showed 10 weeks of yoga significantly reduced PTSD symptoms in women who hadn't responded to standard therapy. Mechanism: restoring the connection with the body and increasing tolerance for bodily sensations. Streeter et al., 2012, showed that yoga increases GABA levels, a neurotransmitter that reduces anxiety. I wrote in my journal, "Through yoga, you solve problems in your personal life. Sounds like esotericism, but the mechanism is concrete. Yoga can help restore the connection with the body. You start feeling your reactions. You notice where you tense up in relationships. A choice to react differently appears." What this means for you. If gym doesn't help with chronic stress, or try yoga, any kind. Slow, where you listen to the body. Cat-cow in 5 minutes in the morning. If any pose triggers panic, that's information. This is exactly where the body stores what it's not ready to release. Don't force it. Approach by a millimeter. Tomorrow, another millimeter. 6. Body dynamics, when the body didn't finish learning its movements. With Olia, I work on body dynamics, restoring micro movements lost in childhood. When I first did ketamine, I crawled to the bathroom. The body was that uncoordinated. After a year of sessions and micro movement work, I walk normally. Also, I can't feel my thighs. I see that shorts are touching, but I don't feel it, where they hit me. I use resistance bands on my legs, a spiky ball, pressure through pillows, breath holds, to reteach the body to feel. Before Olia, I spent years going to a chiropractor and physiotherapist. Pain in the sacrum, locked neck, jaw spasm, and every time the same thing. They loosened it, it eased, a week later it was back, as if the body doesn't remember. I spent money and time and nothing changed for years. The problem wasn't the specialists, the problem was what they couldn't see. My body is dissociated, it doesn't feel itself. When the physiotherapist says, engage your core, I engage, but not the right thing and not the right way. Because muscles that spent decades compensating for the ones that don't work take over the movement before the correct muscles can activate. That's hypercompensation. The body survived however it could and built detour routes. The chiropractor releases a lock, but doesn't see why it comes back. The physiotherapist gives an exercise, and I do it, beautifully, evenly, without pain. Each element separately works, but the chain, when the foot, pelvis, core, and shoulder blade need to fire together in the right sequence, doesn't work, because the connection between them is severed. Not muscularly, neurologically. The brain doesn't send the signal in the right order. The body of a child who grew up in chronic stress never learned these chains. It was busy surviving, not coordinating, and no chiropractor checks for that. Body dynamics is a somatic psychology approach developed in Denmark by Lisbeth Marcher and colleagues from the 1970s. The approach is used in clinical practice, but has limited experimental validation. Marcher proposed a model linking muscle patterns to psychological functions, each of 7 developmental stages: existence, need, autonomy, will, love/sexuality, opinion, solidarity, is linked to specific movements and muscles coming under voluntary control. If development is interrupted by trauma, neglect, abuse, the body doesn't learn these movements and the adult must catch up. Marcher and Fish, 2010. The Body Map, a diagnostic tool testing the tone of over 200 muscle points. In pilot observations at a trauma clinic in Denmark, results correlated with Rorschach test results. This isn't proof. It's a research direction. The meta-analysis by Van de Kamp, Scheffers et al., 2019, published in the Journal of Traumatic Stress, showed body and movement-oriented interventions are associated with reduced PTSD symptoms. Mean effect size G equals 0.56. An updated meta-analysis by the same authors, 2023-29 studies confirm the effect persists. Numbness at impact sites. When a child is beaten systematically, the nervous system may reduce sensitivity in strike zones. A dissociative mechanism. I see shorts touching my thighs, but don't feel it. Restoring proprioception through pressure, spiky balls, weights, bands is standard practice in sensory integration and occupational therapy. Used with children with autism and adults with PTSD. With Olia, I do more than bodynamics. What we do is sometimes called intelligent fitness. There's no established scientific term, but the idea is precise. The body recovers through its function, not through force, not through reps to failure, through correct movement. By doing what it was designed to do, the body comes into order on its own. This is exactly why the gym didn't help, and physiotherapy gave only temporary relief. They worked with individual muscles, but the problem is in the chains, in how the body moves as a whole, in the connection between brain and movement that was severed by dissociation. The foundation is Pilates, not the kind at fitness clubs with music, contemporary Pilates that integrates everything else. Karen Gertner of the Art of Motion School brought together classical Pilates principles, the Franklin method, Feldenkrais, and fascial work into one system. The Franklin method is about visualization. Eric Franklin developed a system of dynamic neurocognitive imagery. You imagine how a joint moves, how bones slide, how fascia works, and the body starts moving differently. Not through the command, tense this muscle, through an image. The brain restructures movement through a picture faster than through an instruction. For a person with dissociation, for whom the order feel your body doesn't work, imagery becomes a detour route. Studies showed students who completed a 3-day course significantly improved movement quality and jump height, neuroplasticity in action. Feldenkrais, the opposite entry point. Small, almost imperceptible movements. Moshe Feldenkrais, a physicist and engineer, created a somatic education method. You make a movement so small that the brain is forced to reanalyze it, not repeat the habitual pattern, but rebuild. The brain-to-movement connection is restored through attention to micro-movements. For a person whose body spent decades moving on survival autopilot, those same hypercompensations, detour routes, locks instead of movements, this is retraining from scratch, not through force, through attention. The chains in motion method, working with fascial chains not in static holds but in dynamic movement, not stretching one muscle beat but moving along the tension line of the entire body. This leads to Thomas Myers and his anatomy trains, a model of myofascial meridians, lines along which tension transmits through the whole body. Pain in the foot can come from a lock in the neck, a problem in the sacrum, from tension in the jaw. This is why a chiropractor could endlessly work on my sacrum, and the pain kept returning, because the source wasn't there. A systematic review by Wilka et al., 2016, published in Archives of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation, analyzed 62 studies and found strong evidence for 3 of 6 Myers meridians. Not all lines are confirmed, but the principle that muscles are connected through fascial networks and affect each other at a distance is confirmed. And neurology, what ties it all together? Motor neurons inside the body, we don't feel them, but they exist. When you make a conscious movement, not on autopilot, but with attention, the neural schema enriches. The connection improves. The brain sends more signal. Energy passes more easily. The same neuroplasticity principle as in breathing and yoga, just through a different entry. For a person with PTSD, whose nervous system spent decades in survival mode, every conscious micro-movement is a step from dissociation toward presence. All of it together, Pilates is foundation, Franklin through visualization, Feldenkrais through micro movements, fascial chains in motion, Myers' anatomy trains, neurology through motor neurons, gave what I never got from the gym, the chiropractor, or classical physiotherapy. The body doesn't just train, it relearns. Remembers movements it should have mastered in childhood but didn't, because it was busy surviving. One day I surrounded myself with pillows. A pillow behind my back, a pillow on each side, a tight band on my legs, pressure inward from the thighs, a ball between my knees, pressure outward, a spiky ball under the sacrum, another pillow on my chest, the whole body under pressure, from all sides, top, bottom, sides, except the face. And in this construction, I started breathing, with holds. And on the breath hold, when the head's control drops, the body felt itself whole for the first time, not separate parts, itself, because external pressure gave what was missing from inside, the sensation of boundaries, the sensation I'm here, I exist, I'm being held. And the body relaxed, not because I forced it, because it finally felt not me holding myself, being held, and I fell into an infant state, as if in the womb, dissolution, silence, zero control, and for the first time it wasn't terrifying. This is called deep pressure. It activates the parasympathetic system, reduces anxiety, gives the body a sense of boundaries. Used in trauma work, with autism, in sensory integration, weighted blankets work on the same principle. But for me, it was more than relaxation. An infant needs to be held, swaddled, pressed close. If that didn't happen, the body lives in the mode. I must hold myself. All my life, every second. The muscles don't relax, not because they can't, because there's no one to hand control to, no one to lean on. There was no support. So become your own support. And the muscles did. When I surrounded myself with pillows, I created that support from outside for the first time, and the body let go and went where therapy, pills, and meditation couldn't reach, to the earliest layer, before words, before memory, to where an infant lies and is held. Winnicott called this holding, a basic need without which the psyche doesn't form normally. If there was no holding, the adult rebuilds it themselves, with pillows, bands, balls. It's not a quirk. It's reparenting through the body. The face stayed uncovered. Not by accident. The face is being seen. Social contact, vulnerability. The body already trusted. The face, not yet. Now I don't surround myself with pillows. I bought a weighted blanket. I sit down, put it on, and through the pressure, I start feeling my body, and I consciously go there into that infant state. But now I don't fall in, I enter, with intention. And in that state, I tell myself, I'm safe. My body is safe. I am a loved, wanted child. I'm not rewriting the past. I'm creating a new experience in the present. The nervous system doesn't distinguish, was this then or now? It records the state. If in a moment of deep relaxation, when the body feels support, you tell it, you're safe, it begins to believe it. Not right away, not the first time. But the path gets laid. There's research showing that inner dialogue with the body, consciously voicing sensations and safety statements, is associated with improved physiological markers. The mechanism, language activates the prefrontal cortex, which regulates the amygdala. You say, I'm safe, and the cortex sends a signal down. Stand down. Something important. During breath holds, fears come up for me. That's normal. The nervous system is releasing suppressed material. But if in that moment you try to summon joy, it can become suppression, not transformation. Stretching joy over fear is the same as smiling while being hit. A familiar pattern, a safer path. First, fully allow the fear to be. Let the body relax, let the sensations emerge, and only then gently add warmth, safety. Not make joy, but give space where joy can arrive on its own. The difference, like between the command relax and the repeated experience of safety. The first doesn't work, the second works. What this means for you. If you have dead zones in your body, places where you see the touch but don't feel it, it may not be a neurological problem. It may be a defense that once saved you from pain. If you've been going to a chiropractor or physiotherapist for years and the pain keeps returning, they may be treating the symptom, not the cause. The cause may be that the body doesn't feel itself as a whole. Hypercompensates. Uses detour routes built in childhood, and until the chains are restored, brain, movement, body, individual exercises won't hold the result. Try what's called intelligent fitness. Pilates, the Franklin method, Feldenkrais. Not strength training, but retraining the body through function, through conscious movement, through micro movements. And if you can't relax, create pressure around the body. Pillows from all sides, a weighted blanket, bands on the legs, a ball between the knees. So the body feels its boundaries. You're creating what wasn't there. The feeling of I'm being held. And if in that state you want to tell yourself I'm safe, say it. Not as an affirmation from social media, as words you say to the body while it finally feels support. Just don't stretch joy over fear. First, let the fear be. Then warmth will come on its own. 7. Walking instead of meditation. At the first Dispenza retreat, I did walking meditation. Walked, just walked, and a thought came. I want to help people like my son. Then people like me. The depression receded. Not forever, but for the first time in months, I felt something other than emptiness. Walking is one of the most studied forms of physical activity for depression. In several meta-analyses, regular walking showed comparable symptom reduction in mild to moderate depression compared to antidepressants. Mechanisms: increased serotonin and endorphins, reduced cortisol. The meditative part adds another layer. Attention to bodily sensations during walking activates the same interoceptive processes. You walk and feel your body, and it returns you from the head to reality. What this means for you. If you can't meditate sitting, don't sit. Walk 20 minutes. Notice your feet. Notice your breathing. No need to think about anything. Just walk and feel. Free, no equipment, no instructor. 8. Conscious movement returns the body. Dissociation, disconnection from the body. You're here but you're not. For a child in an unbearable situation, salvation. For an adult, trap. You don't feel pain, but you don't feel joy either. Interoception, the ability to sense internal processes. Heartbeat, breathing, hunger, emotions. Yes, emotions are bodily sensations too. Tightness in the chest, heat in the face, a lump in the throat. Interoceptive awareness skills are linked to improved emotional regulation. Price and Hooven, 2018. I did yoga and the body knew where to move, proprioceptively. The body felt where it was locked and moved there, like the tongue finds a sore tooth. What this means for you. If you feel nothing, that's not a defect, that's dissociation. The way back is through attention to the body. Any conscious movement, yoga, walking, dancing, washing dishes while noticing sensations. My shoulders are clenched, a millimeter back into the body. Millimeters make the path. 9. Working with parts, the war inside isn't madness. Rabbit, fox, critic, capitulator, Iron Man, suicidal part, wild kitten, they all live inside. Working with parts isn't just a literary metaphor, but a therapeutic model for describing internal conflict. It's a practice where I talk to each part separately, ask what it fears, what it protects, and negotiate. IFS, Internal Family Systems, a therapeutic model developed by Richard Schwartz in the 1990s. The psyche is viewed as a system of parts, subpersonalities, each with its function. 3 types: managers, control prevention; firefighters, emergency protection; drinking, overeating, suicidal thoughts; exiles, wounded child parts holding pain. In a randomized controlled trial, Hodgdon et al., 2022, Journal of Aggression, Maltreatment, and Trauma, obtained encouraging results for IFS with complex trauma. The data preliminarily support the approach's effectiveness, but studies are still few. Jung describes subpersonalities as complexes, autonomous clusters of emotions and beliefs activated by a trigger that hijack consciousness. IFS is a modern development of this idea. My critic says, "You're nothing." The suicidal part says, "There's no way out." The rabbit says, "Run. They're not enemies. Each once saved my life." The task isn't to kill them, but to become the one who sees all parts simultaneously, not inside the war, but above it. What this means for you. If there's a war inside you, one part wants to die, another wants to live, a third criticizes both. That's not insanity. It's a structure of the psyche described in clinical literature. You don't have to choose one part and destroy the rest. This isn't about thinking positive. It's about, critic, I hear you, but I'm deciding now. 10. Why schema therapy reached what others couldn't. I tried everything. EMDR, IFS, cognitive behavioral therapy, 12 steps, meditation, yoga, breathwork, MDMA. Each gave something, but schema therapy reached a different place. IFS says, every part has a positive intention. Find it, and the part transforms. Beautiful, humane. But when I tried to find the positive intention behind the voice that says, "You're worthless, you shouldn't exist," I got stuck. Because it has no positive intention. It doesn't protect, doesn't help. It destroys, slowly, methodically, and it doesn't care that it hurts me. Schema therapy calls this the punitive critic and doesn't try to reform it. It says stop it, shut it up, lock it in a cage. In schema therapy, this is understood not as a part of you, but as an interject, a recording of someone else's voice playing inside you like someone else's record on your turntable. Jeffrey Young describes several types of dysfunctional parent modes that literally get recorded into a child's psyche. The punitive critic says, "You're bad, you're unworthy, you shouldn't exist." The demanding critic is different. "You must be perfect, must check every box, or you're nothing." They look alike, often blend, but they need different treatment. The demanding one can be softened, so it once helped me survive. Gold medal, emigration, career. Its energy is survival energy. The punitive one can't be reformed. It can only be stopped. This turned something inside me. For years I tried to negotiate with a voice that doesn't negotiate, looked for hidden care in it, and schema therapy said, no, not everything inside you is yours. Some things are someone else's. And you can defend yourself from what's not yours. There's research supporting this. A controlled study with Vietnam War veterans showed schema therapy significantly reduced PTSD symptoms, and the effect held at 3 months. In several other studies, it showed greater effectiveness for complex trauma than standard protocols, possibly because it works not only with fear, but with shame, guilt, the sense of defectiveness. And that's exactly the core of complex trauma, There's no consensus yet, but the direction is encouraging. Here's what I saw in schema therapy. A map. The inner chaos broke down into concrete modes with concrete names. And for the first time I could say, this is the punitive critic, and it's not mine. This is the demanding critic, and it was once my salvation. And this is me, the healthy adult, who can choose whom to listen to. What this means for you. If you've been trying for years to negotiate with an inner voice that says you're worthless, and nothing changes, maybe you're trying to reform something that can't be reformed. In schema therapy, the punitive critic is understood not as your part, but as someone else's voice recorded in childhood. You don't need to understand it, you need to stop it. Every time it opens its mouth, as many times as it takes, not fast, but it's the only thing that works. 11. Thoughts can be chosen, but not right away. A candle went out. First thought, I'll die at 42. It didn't feel like a thought. It felt like a rule the body was already living by. The amygdala processes threats faster than conscious analysis engages. Ledoux, 1996. You're already afraid, and only then start thinking. Cognitive reappraisal, when the cortex generates a different interpretation, works. Ochsner et al., 2004. But in PTSD, the cortex is suppressed, the amygdala hyperactive, Shin et al., 2006. There's no gap between thought and reaction. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections, gives hope. Every time you notice an automatic thought and choose a different one, you strengthen an alternative pathway. This is the basis of cognitive behavioral therapy. What this means for you. If you can't think positive, now that's physiology. First, stabilize the body, sleep, breathing, safety. When the nervous system calms, a gap between thought and reaction will appear. 1 second. This is a thought, not a fact. I can choose not to believe it. The first 100 times it won't work. The 101st, it will. 12. Substances, a window, not a door. Under THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, the active compound in marijuana, I first felt my own bones. Under mushrooms, cried for the first time in 30 years. Under MDMA, first felt compassion for myself. THC activates cannabinoid receptors CB1. In my case, the subjective sense of the body changed. Psilocybin reduces default mode network activity. Brain areas linked to rumination. Carhart-Harris et al., 2012. Clinical studies showed depression reduction. Griffiths et al., 2016. MDMA was studied with support from MAPS Institute. None of these substances is an approved therapy, but the potential is being researched. The key is in the substance. The substance creates a temporary state where you can experience what was blocked. If a new experience forms in that window, the brain records new connections. They persist afterward. First, I only felt my body under THC, then without it too. Scaffolding comes down when the building stands. I do breathing techniques, sometimes called DMT breathwork, intense hyperventilation followed by breath holds. Sometimes it produces an experience subjectively resembling psychedelics, but gentler and safer. Insights arrive, sensations in the body, silence. The mechanism isn't DMT. Hyperventilation lowers blood CO2, causing respiratory alkalosis and brief cerebral vasoconstriction. Result, an altered state of consciousness. The hypothesis that breathwork releases endogenous DMT exists but remains unconfirmed. DMT was found in rat pineal glands, 2013, and enzymes for its synthesis were found in human cortex, 2019. but no proof that breathing triggers DMT release in psychedelic effect quantities. The effect is real. The mechanism is gas exchange physiology, not the spirit molecule. During DMT breathwork, I do progressive tensing, clench, release, clench, release. A body that's been locked since birth doesn't know how to relax on command. It needs contrast, tense harder, then let go. Then the parasympathetic kicks in reflexively. Progressive muscle relaxation, Jacobson's technique from the 1930s, one of the most studied. But on its own, it didn't work for me. I wrote about this. I didn't get it, couldn't feel the difference. But paired with breath work, it worked. Because breathing lowers the head's control, the body shifts to a different mode, and only then does tense and release finally land. Not through understanding, through physics. Clenched and released what I'd been holding for 35 years. A study by Cox et al., 2014, PNAS, showed the Wim Hof technique, controlled hyperventilation with breath holds and cold exposure, allows voluntary activation of the sympathetic nervous system and suppression of the pro-inflammatory immune response. Epinephrine release in trained participants exceeded that of bungee jumpers. What this means for you. Hyperventilation breathing techniques can induce altered states of consciousness without substances. If progressive relaxation doesn't work, try it paired with breath work. A body that can't relax must first forget about control. Breathing does that, and tense and release finishes the job. Important, do it with an instructor, not alone. Hyperventilation can cause dizziness, convulsions, fainting. I don't recommend self-treatment. My experience isn't a protocol. But if nothing helps, know that research exists where substances and breathing techniques are used as tools within therapy. The window opens briefly. You need to learn to live without it. 13. Shaking. During yoga practices and while dancing, I shake, literally. I stand and shake. Let the body do what it wants. From the outside, it looks strange. From the inside, as if something is unscrewing that was wound too tight for too long. David Berceli observed people in bomb shelters in Lebanon and noticed a pattern. Children who allowed themselves to tremble recovered more easily. Adults who suppressed the trembling suffered more afterward. This is an observation, not a proven fact, but it became the foundation of his method. Animals after a predator attack shake, and then move on. Berceli proposed, neurogenic tremoring is a built-in mechanism for discharging tension. The body moves from freeze through arousal to calm, the reverse of the defense cascade. The evidence base is partial. A study on a sample of East African refugees showed significant reduction in post-traumatic symptoms after 8 weeks of practice. Skeptics fairly note, shaking during exercises is a normal response to muscle fatigue. Maybe, but my body after shaking releases what it held for years. The evidence base, in progress, my experience, already here. What this means for you. If during practice, yoga, dance, breathwork, your body starts trembling, don't stop it. It's not a malfunction. It may be a discharge. Let it happen. See what comes after. 14. Higher power without God. In a C, there's the concept of higher power as we understand it. For many, that's God. For me, no. I'm an atheist. And I couldn't get past the second and third step because of this. Then I understood. My higher power is the inner parent I grew. Adult Vera, who tells the critic, shut up. Who tells the child inside, I'm here. Mom isn't, but I am. Carl Gustav Jung described a similar process as individuation, the path to wholeness through integrating rejected parts. The shadow, what's suppressed, hatred toward mom, anger, shame. the self, the whole that includes both light and shadow. Jung was a psychiatrist who worked with real patients. His concept of the shadow is used in modern psychology, including in IFS. When I meditated and felt a connection to something bigger, this can be described in neuroscience terms. Meditation reduces default mode network activity. When the DMN quiets, the usual sense of I boundaries disappears. This is experienced as connection to something bigger. Abraham Maslow called these peak experiences a natural human capacity independent of religion. Reparenting, creating an inner parent, is an evidence-based technique described in literature on complex PTSD and in the ACA program. I don't need God to feel grounded. I need an adult inside who survived everything I survived and still stands. How the 12 steps work, not faith but method. I needed to understand, why do the 12 steps work for suicidal depression? Not through God, through the psychological mechanism of each step. This isn't the official scientific model of ACA. It's my interpretation. Step 1, powerlessness. Admitting that control doesn't work. For an ACA person, this is the exit from hypercontrol, the main defense. You can't heal while thinking you're coping. Paradox, admitting weakness is the first strong act. Steps 2 and 3, willingness to lean on something besides yourself, not necessarily God. Could be a group, an inner parent, nature. Mechanism, reducing hyper-responsibility. Step 4, inventory, systematic analysis of your patterns, beliefs, defenses. For me, it worked as cognitive restructuring plus exposure. You look at what you've been running from. Step 5, admitting aloud, telling another person. Mechanism, destroying shame. Shame lives in secrecy. When spoken aloud, it loses power. Steps 6 and 7, willingness to change and letting go, accepting that not everything depends on effort. For an ACA perfectionist, one of the hardest steps. Steps 8 and 9, forgiveness. Not forgive and forget, but seeing your role in destructive patterns. Not for the abuser, for yourself. Step 10, daily inventory. Observing your reactions in real time, literally a mindfulness practice. Step 11, prayer and meditation. For an atheist, silence. 5 minutes without stimuli, without tasks, without purpose. Step 12, carrying the message, helping others. Shifting from I need help to I can help. This restores the sense of value destroyed in childhood. The overall mechanism, dug into the past, found limiting beliefs, analyzed how they affect the present, saw mistakes, noticed patterns through observation, began to change. Not faith, method, not God, honesty. What this means for you. If you don't believe in God, you don't need God for recovery. Higher power can be an inner adult, nature, music, a group of people. The point isn't the object of faith, but the willingness to admit, I don't have to control everything. For an atheist, this support is the inner parent you grew yourself from nothing. Like Munchausen, by the hair, only for real. 15. Gratitude. Not positive thinking, but neurochemistry. I'm a skeptic. When they told me, write 5 things you're grateful for, I rolled my eyes. Gratitude lists seemed like self-deception. Turns out I was partly right. For many people, a stronger effect comes not from a list, but from concretely reliving an episode of gratitude. Neural circuits linked to gratitude respond to a story, not a checklist. Serotonin is considered one of the key neuromodulators associated with gratitude and pro-social behavior. It's released from RAFE nuclei in the brainstem and activates prosocial neural networks, strengthening the feeling of I have enough. Key finding: narrative gratitude works far more powerfully. Not a list, a specific moment. Remember when someone sincerely thanked you. Enter that moment. Feel it with your body. 1 to 5 minutes, 3 times a week. A study by Keeney et al., 2016, published in Neuroimage, used fMRI and showed participants who wrote gratitude letters had heightened neural sensitivity in the medial prefrontal cortex 3 months after the practice. The brain restructures, not a metaphor, a measurable fact. Gratitude practice is associated with increased serotonin and oxytocin and with reduced inflammatory markers, IL-6 TNF-alpha. This may have an antidepressant effect, though of course it's not a substitute for medication in severe depression. What this means for you: gratitude isn't about be positive, it's neurochemistry. Try not a list, but a specific episode. Remember one moment when you were sincerely thanked. Close your eyes. Feel it. 5 minutes. For many, this works more powerfully than 10 items on paper. What follows from all this? The body records everything. If you have inexplicable reactions, it's not a defect. It's body memory. Notice this isn't about now. Chronic stress isn't a metaphor. It physically changes muscles and breathing. Physically, you can begin the way back. Relax doesn't work. Repetition of safety works. Not a command, an experience. Again and again. Working with your head alone is often not enough. 20 years of analysis didn't give what 1 year of breathing and yoga gave. If the pain returns after every chiropractor, the problem isn't the muscle, it's the chain. The body needs to be retrained as a whole, through function, through conscious movement. Thoughts aren't facts, but to see that, you need resources. Body first, then choice. The war inside isn't madness. Critic, rabbit, suicidal part, each once saved your life. The task isn't to kill them, but to become the one who decides. Not all voices inside are yours. The punitive critic is an introject, someone else's recording. You don't need to understand it. You need to stop it. The body discharges tension through shaking, through tense and release, through breathing. Don't get in its way. If pain keeps returning for years, 18, the problem may not be in the muscle, but in the chain. A body that grew up in stress hypercompensates. Intelligent fitness, Pilates, Franklin, Feldenkrais, retrains the body through function, not through force. You can grow a foundation inside, not God, not a teacher, not a therapist, an inner parent, the one who wasn't there, but whom you can create, and a weighted blanket and the words I'm safe. That's not esotericism. It's a way to give the body what it didn't get in infancy. Gratitude isn't weakness. It's neurochemistry that can support a brain stuck in chase mode. I don't need you to believe in anything beyond physiology. I need you to know. If you feel terrible and doctors find nothing, it could be in the muscles, in the breathing, in a nervous system still waiting for a blow. And you can tell it the war is over, not with words, with the body. For sources and peer-reviewed studies referenced in this chapter, please see the print edition of the book. All the sources I reference in this chapter, books, studies, authors, are collected on my website. If you want to dig deeper, go to https://www.faithwithinyou.com/sources.